Hi, and welcome to the Sheep Connect 10-minute talk about water quality. Today, I'm joined by Emma Shaddock from Elders. Thanks, Emma.
Thank you, and thanks to Sheep Connect for the opportunity to have a chat to you today. We're going to give you a quick overview on water quality and some of the things to look out for. So really, water is something we need to be thinking of first and foremost. Sometimes we can get stuck thinking about specific minerals or vitamins or even the protein in feed, but if we haven't got the water right, no matter how good the rest of the diet and the feed is, we're going to run into trouble. So it really is the number one priority for us as sheep producers. Firstly, I want to do just a quick overview on how much a sheep actually needs to drink. And this does vary quite a lot depending on the sort of feed they're on, whether it's salty or green or dry, that class of animal. So ewes that are lactating would need more than a dry ewe. In hot weather, they'll drink more, and certainly if they're walking around more as well. And to go with this, how tolerant those animals are of different quality parameters is quite similar, follows some similar characteristics like class and age, but also weather and feed types and things as well. So if we have some water that isn't great quality, those animals with the highest requirements are going to be the first that usually suffer. So let's talk a little bit quickly about sources. This could be water from a dam, from a bore, from mains water, and they can all certainly taste quite different, but have some very different quality parameters with them as well. So with some of these sources, for example, station sheep that might have only ever seen a dam, if we bring them to inside country and try and put them on a trough, that can be enough of a change that they're not sure what's going on and a bit reluctant to drink. But even just a change in water type can be enough to put stock off as well, even if both those sources meet all of our ideal quality parameters. So that can cause a little setback and something to be aware of if we are changing and know we have some quite different water sources or water quality on our property. So the most limiting factor, and the one we more commonly talk about when we're talking water quality, is salinity. So water that is quite salty, we start to see animals go backwards pretty quickly. So reduced appetite, they'll start to scour. And some of this is due to a larger microbe loss in those animals. So the changes in the osmotic pressure in the rumen means we've got more passing through faster, so more fluid, which then washes out some of those microbes, and we're left with a rumen that can't break down feed like it used to, and the result is animals going backwards. So salinity is not just sodium chloride, it's a measure of all the salt ions that are dissolved in that water. And while surface water usually is, I guess, less saline than bore water, it's important to know that it can vary a lot more, surface water. So whether it's through evaporations in dams increasing salinity, or it could be rain that's dissolved salts along creek banks and things like that. So just something to keep in mind, that that water source might not necessarily have a stable salinity all year around. Now, the tolerance for salinity will vary a lot with water requirements, but also the sort of feed that those animals are on. So if we've got sheep already grazing quite salty feeds like saltbush, they're not going to be able to tolerate the same level of salinity that sheep would that are on green grasses and things like that. So just as a quick overview here, just to put it a little bit in perspective, sheep are some of our more tolerant stock to salinity in water. Having said that, within that, some animals are more, I guess, tolerant than others. So things like weaners or ewes that are pregnant and lactating are a lot less tolerant, and they're the first ones that we have trouble with when we start dealing with some of those sort of moderate saline waters. They can tolerate things up to 4,000 milligrams per litre. Once we're starting to get a bit higher than that, we're talking more either dry ewes or adult wethers, grown animals that there's less pressure on them, so they can tolerate some of those higher levels. Certainly once we're getting over 10,000 milligrams per litre, that water is generally going to be unsuitable for sheep production, and we're going to start seeing some pretty big declines. Palatability comes into play as well. A big part of that is the pH of the water. So if the water is too acidic, we can start seeing problems with acidosis and reduced feed intake. If we're at the other end of the scale and the water's too alkaline, we can see some digestive upsets and scouring, reduces in feed conversion ratio, and also reductions overall in feed and water intake. So important to get this right as well. The water does need to be cool. So ideally we've got pipes that are buried and water sources that are shaded, but need to manage that as best we can. Odorless is best, and that comes sometimes with that change of water source as well. If the water smells a bit different or a bit off compared to what the sheep are used to, that can certainly put them off. And making sure it's clean as well. So stock are quite sensitive to changes in water, and as those water requirements increase, we need to be cleaning the water more regularly. So a good example of this is in a feedlot, where quite often those animals will rinse their mouth out in the water and drop grain in there, and that will change the taste of the water. So we need to be cleaning that out daily, ideally. Contaminants is another problem I suppose we have to contend with. The first is either debris or particularly dead animals fouling water sources. We've already seen some issues this year with Salmonella and E. coli infections in sheep, and that can come about through dead animals fouling water sources. Other things we need to try and keep water free from are heavy metals, such as lead leaking out from an old battery dump, or chemicals like pesticides and insecticides putting on cropping ground as well that can wash into dams. From the mineral side of things, keeping an eye on those magnesium and calcium levels, but certainly watching out for any of our nitrogen fertilizers that might contaminate it. And it's a good point here that we shouldn't reuse any old chemical drums as water sources for livestock. And this does include liquid nitrogen tanks as well. I have seen cases where that's caused some quite significant problems for stock, where the old liquid nitrogen tank still had some nitrogen in the bottom of it and caused the death of quite a few stock. Now, the last one on that list, algae, can cause problems for a couple reasons. One is more mechanical, so we can block pipes and cause issues there and just interrupt water supply. But the other side of it is probably more serious again, where particularly in the case of blue-green algae, we can run into toxins, which can cause significant health issues in their own right for stock as well. So if we are seeing some poorer quality water, or we're suspecting it on our property, the first step is to go and get some water tests done. The Adelaide Water Quality Testing Centre is a good spot to send some samples, or Eurofin's APAL as well, do some livestock water testing. And that way we know what we're actually dealing with as well. Once we've done that, we can start thinking about stock allocation. So putting some of those more sensitive animals, such as weaners, into paddocks with better water sources, and leaving the poorer water, considering running dry weathers or dry ewes up there, that might handle it a bit better. The other consideration is feed type. So there might be an opportunity to utilise a paddock with poorer water during winter, when stock are less reliant on that water source, and getting some of their water from the green feed that they're eating might be a way to utilise some areas of your property. And also mixing sources. Sometimes we can do a shandy between a poorer and a better quality water source, and come up with something that we can use and make the most of the situation. So that's a quick overview, I suppose, of water quality. Lots of things to think about, but really important to get your water tested and make sure that it's meeting your requirements. Thanks.
Thanks, Emma. Just like to thank Emma for sharing her insight and expertise about water quality. This Sheep Connect 10-minute talk has been made possible through funding from Australian Wool Innovation, SA Sheep Industry funds the Department of Primary Industries and Regions. If you want to know more about Sheep Connect, you can go to our website, sheepconnect.sa.com.au, or you can follow us on Twitter.